Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, Tony Hillerman novels, Georgia O'Keeffe, aliens and UFO sightings. You know, these are the things that one generally calls to mind when you think about the state of New Mexico. Who knew that New Mexico is, in fact, a home to a wonderful tradition of fiber arts and beautiful yarn? Well, stay tuned because we're here to find out all about it. Hi, I'm Melanie, and you're watching Yarn Journeys. I am a knitter, a spinner, and a sometimes sewist, and I live in Arlington, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. If you are a returning viewer to my channel, well, welcome back. But if you're new here, I am so glad you found me. Here's what's up for today's episode. First, we are going to visit the Mountain and Valley Wool Festival that was recently held the first weekend in October in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And we're also going to pay a visit to a couple Santa Fe yarn shops. Then it's going to be a big old show and tell with some new additions to the stash, as well as some finished objects and works in projects to tell you about. And finally, we will take a stroll along the beautiful scenery that New Mexico has to offer. I was so lucky to spend about 10 days in New Mexico over the first couple weeks in October, and it is gloriously beautiful. I'm really excited to show you what I was able to see, including a solar eclipse. So, grab a beverage of your choosing, a project to work on, and we'll get right into it. Of course, many of you are likely already aware that the indigenous peoples of the southwestern United States have a rich tradition in the fiber arts, most famously in the form of those beautiful hand-woven Navajo blankets. And of course, there's also the Navajo churro sheep that have been raised in that region for centuries. New Mexico also has a reputation for being artsy and bohemian, going back to the days of Georgia O'Keeffe, perhaps the most famous artist known to work in the region. I first got wind that New Mexico was also a hot spot for fiber arts and yarn when I read Clara Parks' Knitlandia. By the way, if you haven't read Knitlandia, it is fabulous. I highly recommend that book, so be sure to put that one on the list. And I'll also read everything that Clara Parks writes. Anyway, in the first chapter of her book, Clara writes about her meeting and subsequent relationship with Louisa Galenter, who really was one of the pioneers of hand-dyeing yarn in the United States, going back to the late 90s and early 2000s. So this was before, hand-dyed yarn was a widespread thing that everybody was buying on Etsy and at fiber festivals. So I was super excited to see how all this tradition from that's been there for centuries in the fiber arts, as well as hand dyeing and artsy and bohemian. I was super excited to see how it was all going to come together at the 40th version of the Mountain and Valley Wool Festival. It traditionally had been held in Taos, which is just north of Santa Fe, but they recently moved it to the fairgrounds in Santa Fe because they needed more space for all the vendors and fiber arts fans who wanted to come to the show. So let's go pay the festival a visit, shall we? Here we go! Mountain and Valley Wool Festival in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Can't wait to see what fun stuff there is here. I always like to start with the animals. The shearing demonstrations are always fun to watch. This Angora goat was happy with his haircut. There was a beautiful llama mommy and baby. Here are two merino ewes before their shearing. And here they are after, and all their wool. And then it was time to go look at the wonderful booths of fiber and yarn vendors, including this amazing alpaca boucle from Que Sera. Bluebird Dye Gardens made dyeing with natural dye stuff look fun and easy. Yank Your Yarn had a PG-13 warning and needed it. This booth was totally hilarious. The vendor hall was full of hand-dyed yarn and fiber delights. I saw lots of fleeces from local shepherds for sale. I so much enjoyed the vibrant colors from hand dyer Desert Panda Fiber Arts. And outside there were a bunch more vendors with the background of the mountains. It was a gorgeous day. Check out this naturally dyed fiber. Gorgeous. Cactus Hill Farm was one of my favorites with this gorgeous hand-dyed merino farm yarn. And they also had some gorgeous fleece for sale. I mean, check out that crimp. And if you didn't feel like washing and prepping your own fleece, they also had roving for sale. Cat Mountain Fiber Arts had some amazing, beautiful hand-dyed yarn. The 100th Sheep called their booth the Yarn Petting Zoo. An expert told us all about the Navajo churro sheep.
I turned 40 and now I have to shave my offspring. It's the same way with the sheep. So with Navajo churro, unlike the finer breeds where it's like really, the fibers are exposed to elements, they get weaker because they're very liquid. This is just a yearly Navajo churro, but look at how much it's trying to stay close. And then it has that finer expression. No, I use fibers.
And the local Santa Fe Fiber Guild showed how you could take fiber to a shawl from spinning to carding to weaving. And then it was time to go. It was dinner time, and I needed to find a good Hawaiian pizza to eat. To coincide with the Fiber Festival, the yarn shops in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and Taos decided to hold the Enchanted Yarn Crawl, featuring raffles and prizes, and some of the shops even featured sort of dedicated skeins, one of a kinds, just for that weekend. I was able to visit 2 yarn shops in Santa Fe while I was there. So the first I visited was Hacer, and Hacer means to make in Spanish. This boutique really prides itself as providing a space for sewists and knitters to create community and to learn. The selection of yarns that were for sale was very well edited and was mainly comprised of some of the popular higher end yarns such as Woolfolk and Spin Cycle. But there were some local fiber artists represented in the form of Vortex yarns. Hacer also sells a lovely edited collection of fabrics for those who want to engage in sewing. And there's some notions and tools specifically for sewing, as well as knitting for sale there too. I really got a sense that it was a lovely, warm place to find community among those who enjoy slow fashion. I also visited Looking Glass Yarns in Santa Fe, which possibly has the widest selection of yarn and brands I have ever seen. And I've been to a few yarn shops. The only one that I can think of that might possibly compare with it is the Beehive Wool shop in Victoria on Vancouver Island. Looking Glass Yarns, it had so many brands in all their varieties. I mean, there were earth yarns, juniper moon farms. And in fact, there was this wall of cumulus yarn, which is a cotton and nylon yarn in solid colors, tonal colors, variegated colors, gradients. It was amazing to see. They also had a lovely collection of New Mexico local yarn dyers and fiber artists, such as Cat Mountain Fiber Arts. And I even was exposed to a brand that was new to me, although I think I might have heard of it before, called the Queensland Collection, which is Australian. Then in Malabrigo, they had almost every variation of Malabrigo I'd heard of in all the colorways. I mean, and there are a lot of colorways, for example, of Malabrigo Rios. They also featured a new yarn of Malabrigos, this bulky yarn that had like this black netting, and then the fiber was somehow stuffed into the netting. I am really curious about this one. It seemed to be quite beautiful, and I was really curious about how it would knit up. I really got the sense that, as represented by the Wool Festival and the yarn shops, that New Mexico and Santa Fe in particular is a rich and wonderful place to explore the fiber arts and woolly goodness. And in fact, even while my husband and I were out for a run through Santa Fe, we ran by a sheep farm, and I was able to glimpse some cute sheep through a fence, and that hasn't happened to me much in the U.S. The last time I just ran into sheep without trying, well, that was in Ireland, where one expects to see them. And now it's time for some show and tell. So it's been a bit since I have recorded an episode. I'm super psyched to have been able to find the time to do this today. I hope you still got your beverage going and happy to hang out with your project, because I've got a fair bit to show you. So first of all, from the Wool Festival, I got a t-shirt. I really love the logo of the Wool Festival with its New Mexico emblem, the bright colors, and the sheep. So I think this will be a fun one to wear. I had the intention of being fairly, how shall I say? Well, let's just say I didn't want to go crazy and buy a whole bunch of stuff because the stash has been enlarged this year. But I did buy a few things. So here's what I got. From Desert Panda Fiber Arts, I got this beautiful fingering. It is called Squishy Sock in the colorway Pocket Full of Rainbows. 85% superwash merino and 15% nylon. And I'll hold it up to the camera so you can see. I just love that bright color against that gray tonal background. Now this, I saw this colorway knit up as a sock, and I was like, well, I want those socks. So that's what I planned to make with this. I had determined before going to the wool festival that I was not going to buy any spinning fiber because, well, I already have a lot of spinning fiber, more than I can possibly hope to spin in the foreseeable future. However, the 100th sheep had some beautiful, beautiful hand-dyed braids that I just couldn't resist. I saw this gorgeous, gorgeous braid of blended, it's top, it's 75% BFL and 25% Tussa silk. And I just love these rich red tones. I was chatting with the hand dyer at 100th Sheep, and she said that when she dyes fiber, oftentimes it's really hard to get a deep, rich red. So this colorway, which she calls not green, because it's definitely not green, which is the complement of red on the color wheel, for those of you who are color nerds. So anyway, to get this rich red, she threw, she said, every red dye she had into the pot. And well, I saw this red braid and I thought to myself, well, I just had to have it because red. And it is really soft and squishy, and I think this is a worthy addition to the stash. And well, just one last PG-13 moment. I could not walk away from Yank Your Yarn without getting anything, so I got this Notions bag. So I'm sure this will cause a little bit of a twitter or a snicker at my next knitting meetup. Then when I visited Hasser, they were featuring Vortex Yarns special colorway for the weekend, which is called Nigella. This is their Labyrinth yarn, which is 80% superwash merino and 20% bamboo. This will make a lovely sock as well. And it would also make, a nice drapey one skein shawl too. So I love these New Mexico inspired colors that are represented in this yarn. So I'm very happy to have a New Mexico fiber artist in my stash. And then when I visited Looking Glass Yarns, they had a sweater sample knit in the Queensland Collections Kathmandu DK, and well, I fell in love. So I got a sweater's quantity of yarn in this gorgeous green tweedy yarn. The colorway is Peridot, and this yarn is lovely and soft. It has a little bit of drape to it. It is a mixture of merino, cashmere, and silk. So I have my eye on a few designs by Thea Coleman of Baby Cocktails. And I'm thinking that this DK yarn might fit for one of those. If not, I'm sure I'll be able to find something. I just love this color and the tweediness of it, but it's also really soft and squishy because of the merino and the cashmere. So super happy to add this and think about the potential it might have. And one final addition to the stash. So as I mentioned in a couple episodes ago, my mom unfortunately recently passed away, and my siblings and I have been going through her things. And my mom didn't have a big yarn stash. She really stopped buying yarn in maybe the early 90s. And some of the yarn that she had in there was, late 1980s chenille or, well, some really sort of funky stuff. But she also had bought a sweater's quantity of this Manos Del Uruguay discontinued yarn. So this is 8 skeins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's 9 skeins. It's 9 skeins of Manos Del Uruguay 700 tex, plus 1 skein of black. So she must have been planning some sort of sweater with, red with black accents. Anyway, it's a single, and it is 100% wool. I'm not sure of the fibers. It is also hand dyed. On Ravelry, I was able to find out that it is a precursor to Manos del Uruguay's Classica. So I'm hopeful by looking at some of the things that people have knit with that yarn that I'll be able to find a pattern that will fit. But I loved on the label it says, dry cleaning is recommended as yarn is hand dyed. You rarely hear of people dry cleaning hand knit wool sweaters. So I am definitely going to swatch and block and see what the dye does before I knit anything with this. But it was so lovely and poignant to find a sweater's quantity of red yarn in my mom's stash. It was almost like it was waiting for me. I need more red yarn, like a hole in the head, because I could almost name my channel The Red Yarn Show because it shows up so frequently. But anyway, thanks, Mom. I'm so happy to have this yarn to knit with, and it will remind me of you. So let's go on to some finished objects. I finished my pressed flowers socks. The pattern is by Amy Christoffers, and it is, one among many of the pressed flowers patterns she has. Of course, there's the cardigan, the shawl, the hat, the cowl, and so on. I am really pleased to have knit these socks. The pressed flowers motif is, of course, a mosaic. And a couple things I will say about knitting these socks. So because of the mosaic technique, the fabric is a bit thicker than if it was just single-stranded. As a result, the socks knit a little bit tighter And I think I wish I would have knit them on a slightly looser gauge. You know, with the one wearing, they do stretch a little bit, and that makes them comfy, but they are a bit tight. So keep that in mind when you knit mosaic technique socks, because I think that tight gauge something, at least for me, to think about in future. They also feature an afterthought heel. So you knit the socks in a tube from the cuff down, and after you've finished the toe, you pick up stitches where you've marked the heel to be with waste yarn, and then it's almost like you knit another toe. It is the exact same technique. You know, it's not my favorite toe. It's not my favorite heel construction, just because picking up those stitches for the heel, well, it's a bit fiddly. But it likely is the best when you're doing some kind of stranded or mosaic color work. Anyway, I'm really happy with how the Knit Picks stroll in this green colorway matches with the At Hanes sock yarn in the colorway Not Honeydew, which is this lovely peachy color. And most recently off the needles, as of last night, is my Musselburgh hat. I knit this in the Land du Nord Poema that I bought in Venice last winter. And you know, the Musselburgh is a very popular hat pattern by Ysolda Teague. And what it's really famous for is you essentially knit a big tube. You can see here that Land du Nord is a gradient yarn, and I cast on with the Emily Ocker pinhole cast on, which you do it with a crochet hook, and this is going to be, I think, my favorite cast on for that, you know, circular center cast on. It worked really well for me. And then you just, you fit one end of the hat into the other for a nice double thick hat. I haven't blocked it yet, but you know, I almost feel like I could get away without doing that. And now I can go dark, or I can go light, and I think it's even really pretty like this with the turned up brim. So I think this is going to be a super warm hat for the winter, and can't wait till it gets cold out to be able to wear it. So for some works in progress. So first let's talk about one I'm taking a time out on. Back in September, I cast on a Ranunculus. I succumbed to the FOMO. Because everybody and their brother and sister seem to have knit a Ranunculus. So here is mine. I have done the body, and I'm starting on one of the sleeves here. I was knitting it up in 2 strands of Lola Bella's soft cashmere, which is a super fine lace weight that I had picked up on my trip to Venice last winter. I had seen a project, a finished project, knit up in the same exact wool and colorway on Ravelry I corresponded with the knitter and said, hey, did you like how it turned out? And she really loved it. So I was encouraged to give it a try. Well, I made it through the body, and then when I tried it on, now granted, blocking is going to do, I think, a lot for the lacy portion of this, but when I tried it on, I didn't like how super meshy and see-through this has ended up. I mean, I guess I could have predicted that. And I thought, oh, this will be really pretty to wear, on special occasions or on the holidays with the camisole underneath. But, I began to have second thoughts. And so I'm not usually one to put whips aside and in timeout, because I just don't like having unfinished things hanging around. So what do you think? Should I keep going? Should I see it through to the end? How do you feel? Have you ever knit something with this kind of texture? How did it turn out for you? Anyway, that is my ranunculus. And I think I'm going to get over the FOMO. Just because everybody else has knit the ranunculus doesn't mean I have to also. Now, I can say the exact opposite for this next work in progress. I have been knitting the Between Petals pullover by Teti Lusak, and I have finished the yoke and split for the sleeves. So I am just really pleased. Now this color work is not yet blocked, so it's got a little bit of, of that bumpy stuff that stranded can feature. But this has been really nice to knit. Now, Teti knit hers in 2 strands held together of Istex Einband, which is Icelandic wool. Now, I've knit a couple sweaters in Icelandic wool, and I didn't want another one. So instead, and I may have mentioned this in my Shenandoah Valley Fiber Festival episode, I got this wonderful yarn from Simple Hill Farm. This is a DK weight non-superwash merino. This is the colorway Mushroom, which is made from a blend of the natural colors of the merino sheep, and the purple is also naturally dyed. I just love knitting with this yarn. It is squishy and soft, yet it has just a little bit of, I don't want to say tooth to it, but it's got, it actually feels a lot like targy. So it's not like, it is soft, but it's not like silky or slippy feeling. And it's not scratchy in any way. I am really falling in love with this yarn. Now, because I was using something different than the pattern, I made sure to swatch. So I first did a nice big swatch on size 4 needles. And this is knit in the round. I had recently seen a tutorial by Roxanne Richardson where she showed another technique of knitting a swatch in the round without sort of just bringing the yarn around in the back. And then in order to get a flat thing to measure, you then cut it up at the back. I'm not going to go through exactly how you do it here, but I will link to the tutorial in the description. So the benefit of doing this in Roxanne's way is that should, in the unlikely event and unfortunate event that I am playing Yarn Chicken, I can use the yarn for my swatch, because there's, I didn't have to take a scissors to the yarns. This is all perfectly good yarn to re-knit with. So that is a good thing. So anyway, this was my swatch in the size 4 needles, and my gauge was too tight. So then I tried again on size 5 needles, again using, let's see which way, oh, that's the knit outside side. Using Roxanne's technique, so I have this lovely fringe here. And I wasn't afraid to knit another swatch because I knew that the yarn could be reused. And of course, then I also did a color work swatch to make sure I would get gauge in the yoke, because so much can go wrong if you don't get gauge with the color work. And I was lucky enough to get it on the first try. And I used Roxanne's technique, even with the stranded color work. It works great. So I highly recommend this technique for knitting your swatches in the round. So once again, the tutorial will be linked in the description. This is a game changer. Don't have to be afraid of burning yarn with a swatch. Anyway, this has been very addictive knitting. So a couple things I forgot to mention. The first time I cast this on, I decided to follow Teti's recommendation to do the yoke bottom up. And for me, since I am knitting size 4, that involved casting on provisionally 324 stitches. That's a lot, which meant that, when you join in the round to start your, knitting the yoke, it's even more difficult to make sure that you're not twisting things. I did, and about 12 rows in, I realized that I had a nice big old twist. And a couple of you mentioned that there is a technique that Patty Lyons has to fix that so that you don't have to recast on. But given that this is stranded color work, and also that I really want this sweater to be the best work I can do, I frogged and figured I would go top down. In the pattern, Teti has you do a small collar of ribbing, but I figured I wanted to see how the whole sweater comes together before I decide on how I want the collar to look. So I did a provisional cast on at the neck, and I will go back and knit the collar when the rest of the sweater is done. I'm almost thinking I might do a turtleneck. I don't know. We'll see. I think there's a few ways it can go. We'll see how much yarn I have left off, and we'll see how it hangs on my shoulders, and I'll make that decision then. So do stay tuned. So that was a lot of show and tell. Let's relax and look at some of the beautiful scenery I took in on my trip to New Mexico. we headed to the famous Ghost Ranch to do some hiking. And I got to see a tarantula. Thankfully, the mountain lion only left his prints. The scenery at the Ghost Ranch is famous from Georgia O'Keeffe paintings and movies like The Magnificent Seven. After that hike, the butterscotch pudding at Joseph's was totally worth it. And so was the chocolate at Kakawa Chocolate House. Up in the mountains above Santa Fe, the aspen trees were turning a glorious yellow. After 4 days in Santa Fe, we drove off to Farmington to check out the New Mexico Badlands, where after sunset, my husband was able to photograph the Milky Way rising over the hoodoos. We found some beautiful natural arches to explore. And we braved the wind and the sun to walk among the totally alien-looking landscape that is the Bisti Badlands. This is the so-called alien egg hatchery, which is just totally bizarre looking. Shiprock, which is what is left of an ancient volcano, is just astounding. And somehow the next morning I was able to eat this entire plate of huevos rancheros. The last morning we were in Farmington, there was a solar eclipse, which was so exciting. People were just hanging out in the hotel parking lot with their setups in order to safely capture and see the eclipse. I got an app and a special filter for my iPhone so that I could take a few pictures myself. I hope you enjoyed this yarn journey to New Mexico. Please be sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss the next episode of Yarn Journeys. Thanks so much for spending time with me, and until next time, because it is you to you around the world here on Yarn Journeys.